Welcome to Down Under World Denizens, Episode 2. Hey, and we'd like to really just say thank you so much to everybody who's listened to our first ever episode. You'll be pleased to know that we are currently, as we're recording, in triple digits in terms of downloads, which is fantastic. Yeah, that's correct. We are actually recording this segment 2 days after our first episode went live. But just to put that into perspective, there was quite a number of days at which the first episode was in editing. So it's been a little while since we've recorded. And we're actually not in our regular recording studio. We are not in the man cave, which we had our formal acknowledgement of country last episode. This time we are in Loganholme. We are on the road. We are planning to record a segment which you'll hear later on this episode at Cane Toad Cup, and we are currently at our accommodation. And tomorrow we will be competing, and you'll hear us competing in that segment tomorrow. But the reason we really wanted to introduce this episode today is to really draw focus to one particular element of Blood Bowl, and it's really the focus of this episode, and it is all about Blood Bowl tournaments. Blood Bowl tournaments are a unique element of Blood Bowl. They are a distinct way of playing the game, and I wanted to just introduce our regular commentators to you in this section and talk briefly about tournaments. And I thought I'd start with Millsy. What was your first Blood Bowl tournament that you ever played in?
My first Blood Bowl tournament was in 2011. It's called River City Cup 7. I don't know if there was a River City Cup 8 after that. Maybe it was because of me. I did pick up my first trophy at that tournament. It was called the Wooden Spoon. I was playing my Orcs, which was my first team ever in league. It was, my first introduction to tournaments. Loved it. The very same year I went down to Eucalyptus Bowl in Sydney and competed there, and I've gone on and just loved tournaments since then.
Fantastic. And what about you, Dan? Or one of our listeners has suggested that we actually give you a nickname, and they've suggested you're now known as Wilts.
That's fine by me.
So tell us about your first Blood Bowl tournament.
So my first Blood Bowl tournament, as you will know, but we'll share with our listeners, was a tournament called the Sandlot Sevens, which you ran in Gladstone 2 years ago now, was it?
2022.
Yeah. 2022. So I'd played 2 league matches up until that point from the previous league, and you got me along for the Sevens tournament just for a bit of fun. I turned up with Imperial Nobles as part of the No Reroll Association. I had a spare linesman and I had an apothecary, which neither of them saw play the whole day. And I managed to walk away with the number 1 trophy against the Halfling team, who had a Halfling Master Chef that was crying softly in the corner.
Yes, and I remember that win very well. It was a great little tournament that I ran, just dipping my toes back into tournament organising after a bit of a hiatus and moving up to Queensland in that gap. For myself, the very first Blood Bowl tournament I actually attended to play was CanCon, which is the Australian Blood Bowl Nationals, or was for a while. So CanCon was running every year. They're running a Blood Bowl tournament as part of a convention that runs in Canberra every year on the Australia Day public holiday, normally partnered with a long weekend. And I'd come along and watched a few times. I'd even met a couple of Blood Bowl coaches that still play today. But I first played in 1999. By 2001, I was actually running the Blood Bowl tournament. So I'd fairly quickly moved up the ranks there. So what are Blood Bowl tournaments? Well, they are quite different to leagues. Blood Bowl tournaments are really trying to cram multiple games of Blood Bowl together in one location against a bunch of coaches that don't normally play together in a league. So if you're new to the Blood Bowl scene, you're not really familiar with how Blood Bowl tournaments differ to League, there are some significant differences. We're going to touch on that. But traditionally, a long time ago, Blood Bowl tournaments used to run as part of a convention. And some Blood Bowl tournaments around the globe still do run as part of a larger gaming convention where people come together to play as a part of a larger event where there's stalls where you can buy things, lots of gamers descending from all over the place to play a variety of different games. But now Blood Bowl has tournaments that are just run for the sake of Blood Bowl and nothing else, and they occur in their own venue by themselves. People come, they play their Blood Bowl, and everybody goes home. And we're attending one of those tomorrow. So I wanted to ask our commentators, why go to a tournament? Why would you travel like we have to come to an event rather than just playing in your local league?
Oh, well, for me, it's nowadays is meeting new people, meeting more Blood Bowlers, which is always a high priority with me. One of the things that people go to Blood Bowl tournaments for is to see who's the best. We all have like the banter in our leagues. It's like, well, if I was playing this, I could have done this, and so on. And a Blood Bowl tournament is a really quick and easy way to find out who's the best player on the day. You know, it might differ. Next month you might not do as well, or next tournament. But it's rather than being a big fish in a little pond in your home league and going, yes, well, I can win that. It's like, well, are you any good against somebody else that can also play that well? And pitting yourself against someone of equal calibre.
I'd like to join Millsy's sentiment there that community is the biggest part of tournaments. Number one reason why I travel is to catch up with players I've played against in previous events, people that I might not have seen for 6 months or 12 months at a time, and pick up as if it was yesterday and keep having a great old time. Another thing is a league takes time to get your players developed. Most tournament packs give you skills straight off the bat that you can give to your players. So you'd think, wouldn't it be cool if this player could do this? Well, a tournament gives you that chance for every game the whole weekend, rather than having to score points on one player only to get them that one skill that you want and see if they can actually use it during your league.
And I think that's probably one of the key differences between playing in a league and playing at a tournament. Is a tournament usually is what we call a resurrection tournament. Now, what that means is any injuries that sustained to the players during the game magically disappear from game to game. It's like the team has reset between each game. And that comes for a really good reason, because if people have travelled a long way, and some people do, the last thing you want is have them turn up to a tournament where it's normal progression Blood Bowl and their star witch elf dies in turn one of their first game, and then they have a miserable time the rest of the tournament because they don't have that player anymore. If they had regular gold that you earned and star player points being allocated and people rolling random skills, it would be a completely different experience than a tournament scene where you know it's going to be a fair game against your opponent every game. And so this idea that, you know, in a tournament situation, you don't worry about star player point progression, you don't worry about winnings after every game and developing your players over the course of their games. That's been a big adjustment to what Blood Bowl looks like game to game in a tournament as opposed to a league. And some people genuinely like that type of Blood Bowl as opposed to a league because, as Millsy alluded to and Dan alluded to, it's a very balanced game as a result.
Yeah, one of the other things I love about a tournament as opposed to playing leagues, which I also love, is in a tournament, because your team's going to resurrect, I can go for that one-off play at the end of the match and not worry about my war dancer dying here or tripping over there and doing this. And you can do that extended play that you might in a league, knowing that you've got an important semi-final match coming up. You might want to play a little bit, I don't know,
a little bit more safe and conservative.
Yeah. And in a tournament, it just allows you. It's like, well, if that guy dies, he dies. I'll put him in front of the treatment and let him get smashed, so that this player can go here, and it offers that extra sort of level of complexity to a game.
I'm playing Snotlings. Everybody's expendable.
And that is actually true, that Dan has packed his snotlings and they are turning up tomorrow morning bright and early, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready for the first 3 games of Cane Toad Cup tomorrow. I wanted to talk briefly about this style of tournament is actually also, this style of playing Blood Bowl is actually also a really interesting way to actually learn the game. Now, Millsy, you stumbled upon this running your Blood Bowl league in Bundaberg. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you've adopted a tournament approach to get new players into playing Blood Bowl?
Yeah, definitely. So, as we found out in episode 1, my home league is now called Gobble, the Grimm's Open Blood Bowl League, and I'd been going in there and hounding them for I don't know how long. Going, have you got any Blood Bowl players? Are you getting into this, doing that? And he'd say, I've got a couple of people, and finally Craig up there at Grimm's bit the bullet and went, you know what, I'm going to buy a heap of Blood Bowl stuff, I'm going to put it on the shelves, and all of these people flocked to it. They loved the idea of it, they'd seen it, they may have played it online, but they were all 100% rookies. Some of them had literally picked up the box set, painted it, and were ready to play in the league. So I came up with our first league as playing just like a tournament. I gave them I think it was 1.2 million, and just said, here you go, build your team, your primary skills cost 20k, secondary skills cost 40k, and we'll keep it at that. We don't have to do any more tracking. All we need at the end of the tournament, or end of each game, is how many touchdowns did you score and how many casuals did you inflict, and we can go from there. So it was perfect for a really beginner novice league like ours, where they didn't have to learn any of these other things of like, oh, well, that guy's dead, but he's going to miss this game and next one. My TV goes down by this, but then I get a journeyman and my TV goes up by... And some of those complexities in a league, they didn't have to worry about, and they could solely focus on learning the game. And as we found out in the last episode, they beat me in the semi-final just through having to play the game and not worrying about anything else. So we have now finished that league, and we're going to a full regular league. So
A progression league.
Progression league from here on. But just running that league, that initial league like a tournament, allowed them to just learn the rules of playing Blood Bowl and not worry about anything happening on the side. Yeah, it was fantastic.
League management and certainly paperwork does come into it at the end of it a bit. There's certainly a lot to be said for managing your team value to a minimum to keep it from blowing out and giving other teams an advantage against you for star players or other inducements. I need to learn this myself with my vampires. They are ballooning out of control. Absolutely nothing like my snotlings that have laundered 2 million credits in one season of games. So some people live for the league progression and the statistics, the paperwork adjustments. I'm keeping track of all my players separately at home myself. Some people just don't care either way, and certainly we don't want to make it any harder for them than we need to.
Yeah, and I think you've stumbled upon something really innovative there, Millsy, in terms of actually what I particularly like about this idea of a resurrection league is not only is it great for new players to the game in terms of, as you say, that they don't have to worry about their star war dancer dying suddenly, but also it makes it easy for you as tournament organiser. You've just said there's so many less stats and things you need to track. You don't need to make sure people are updating their team roster sheets properly. You've got all their roster sheets. That's it. Once locked down, done, finished, sorted.
Yeah, and that was one of the easiest things for me. So I got everyone to put their rosters in. I had to make 1 or 2 changes to a couple of guys. I said, you put a primary on or a secondary instead of a primary. But once that was set, literally all I needed after each game, if I wasn't there on game day, was tell me how many touchdowns you scored, tell me how many casualties you inflicted, and we also kept track of how many fans, because I've got this little database that shows how many fans came to a match. But that was the entirety of the paperwork, which for a league commissioner is just magical. You turn up, you play, you go home, and your paperwork's done. Yeah,
that's great. I actually think it's really interesting that across the globe, tournaments are almost unanimously resurrection tournaments now, but it didn't used to always be that way. Now, I've mentioned that one of my expertises on this podcast is that I'm the one that's long in the tooth, been around Blood Bowl a long time, and initially Blood Bowl tournaments were not that way, at least in Australia. They were actually progression tournaments. And so you'd come to, something like CanCon and it would be a full normal progression league in a weekend.
That story about your witch elf dying in the first turn of the first game, that's actually experience for you.
It wasn't my personal experience, but there was a coach who had travelled all the way from Melbourne, who travelled over 600 kilometres to be at CanCon, and that actually did happen to them. I don't think it was in turn one, but it was in game one. And this is before the days of journeyman. This is before the rules actually had, free lineman players to replace any players that died. So he then had to limp through the rest of his CanCon experience down a witch elf. So it was a pretty tough call. And so I guess it's an interesting discussion. I'd actually like our listeners to chime in here. Would you be interested in a full progression tournament? Now, it's very unusual. I'm actually not aware of any full progression tournaments globally, but it was almost the niche that CanCon did end up developing over time. And I was really pleased that in some discussion that Andrew Old had, and Andrew Old, shout out to him, resurrected CanCon after a little hiatus period of a few years without any Blood Bowl happening at that convention. He ran it again this year, and he actually was toying with the idea of having some kind of progression system built in, honouring its heritage of being a progression tournament historically. And yeah, I'm interested whether people would be keen for something like that, just as a point of difference at a tournament somewhere, not necessarily CanCon, which of course the major part of CanCon, being called a major, has moved. But that actually ties us into a really nice segue as to the purpose of the organisation that you have heard us talk about in episode 1, hopefully, called the NAF. And the NAF stands for Nuffle American Football, as I already explained. But interestingly, there is this volunteer organisation that helps oversee tournaments. And so I thought it would be a really good opportunity to talk in our podcast about what is the NAF, what does it do? We actually have an interview with Mr. Nate Beam, a past NAF president, in this podcast later on this episode. I'd like to talk briefly about what is the purpose of the NAF. And interestingly, I was, in the very, very early days, invited to be a part of the formation of the NAF. Originally, Jervis Johnson had an experience releasing the 4th edition Blood Bowl rules, which had not gone particularly smoothly, introducing some rules that people thought were a little bit unusual. And so he decided to reach out to popular players that were well known in the community and well respected, to form a committee to help revise the rules.
Popular players? How did you get on there, Dave?
Oh, yeah, well, okay, maybe it was the wrong choice of words. But we'd been on this mailing list, email mailing list, and we'd been selected based on the fact that we were respected for sensible answers.
I'm still looking in bin news here.
It was a long time ago. And anyway, I was selected, and what ended up happening was the formation of 2 separate distinct items. Originally, it was proposed as one. It was originally proposed to be the Blood Bowl Coaches Society. That was Jervis's own words. And it ended up being split into 2 separate things, which was the Blood Bowl Rules Committee, which I was invited to be a part of, and the formation of what Chester Zeshonsky, aka Chet, coined the NAF. That's who decided to call it the name of the organisation from the law. That was I got that email on the 1st of February 2001. That was proposed by Jervis. And by the 17th of February, we determined that it needed to be the NAF, and we were starting to draft up a charter for what the NAF would look like. But the idea was to have a series of tournaments at varying different levels. So regional tournaments, and then national tournaments, and then an international tournament that came into being. And we still have that structure with the NAF now, that there are these majors. And as mentioned initially, that was at CanCon, and then that has actually transferred over now to be with Eucalyptus Bowl, which is coming up in a few weeks' time, with James Russell Wills, aka Raybird, who is the organiser of that. If you are in the Sydney region on, is it the 13th of July, Millsy?
I believe it is the 13th of July.
13th and 14th, yes. And make sure you have a good look at potentially attending. I'd really encourage it. Last I looked, they had 65 coaches attending, which is actually quite an increase from last year when we went.
Yeah, the numbers were down slightly last year, but I'd been on a hiatus for a few years. I think my very first Eucalyptus Bowl was the year that they got 76, which was the highest in Australia at the time. But it's gone through some ups and downs, and it looks like it's on the rise and on the up again.
Yeah, it's great to see. I'm really disappointed that Millsy and I can't make it, as discussed last episode.
Devastated.
Yeah. Although Stewie is still tossing up whether he may make it or not, so we'll wait and see there. But the major basically meant that it was a more significant tournament, and so the NAF, as part of the discussion really, really early on, and I've got email records to show this, they decided they wanted some kind of coach ranking system, but they wanted it not just by coach but by team played as well, because there was a recognition that certain teams were more challenging to play than others. And so they decided to separate not just the coach but the team played as well. So everybody has a ranking for each race they take to a tournament. And the more tournaments you go to with that specific race, your coach ranking either goes up more or down more. And if you go to a major, there's more skin in the game. So the amount of points that you can go up by or down by adjusts. So the NAF maintain a database with all those coach rankings and all those results of games between two member coaches, members of the NAF, in this database, and they track it, and that gives us some pretty good statistics on how teams are doing or not doing, and we can drill into those tournament results to see specific effects, like what that has meant to particular teams' performance given a rules change or something like that. You can actually track the adjustment of results. The NAF do a few other things. One of the most important things that the NAF do is actually be a central location where tournaments are registered, where they're going to occur. They need to be listed in advance, and they can receive NAF approval. Now, not every single tournament has to be an official NAF thing. This is a volunteer organisation run by Blood Bowl enthusiasts, but there is nothing stopping a bunch of guys getting together and running a Blood Bowl tournament if they want to. And in fact, around Australia, we've had Blood Bowl tournaments this year that have not been official NAF tournaments. We were talking about the Cairns boys putting on their Hooligans back in April, I believe.
Yeah, it was I think it was a small gutter bowl tournament.
That's
maybe.
right.
And they did that because their next tournament, Fumble in the Jungle, is going to be a full NAF tournament, and they just wanted to get their heads around how to run a tournament. So what better way than just to get a few guys together and run the system that they were going to use and see if it works. So for that, they didn't require it to be NAF, but they just wanted to see whether their rule set and organising way would work.
Yeah, and so the NAF are really there to help support tournaments, and one of the ways they do that is they have guidelines on how you can run a tournament. Of course, you can choose to do whatever you like, but you might not get official NAF approval. Then the NAF are also there to encourage coaches to be a part of this database and to encourage membership. There are these gifts that have been organised that you get as a part of your membership package, and they are dice. Every single year they have been dice. There have been a few other things the NAF have invested in to encourage people. One of the things I did is from Australia here, Neil from Shadowforge Miniatures actually sculpted up a bunch of NAF official balls to play with Blood Bowl. There was a set of 6 of them that were cast in metal and given away just as freebies at tournaments around the globe. That happened very early on in the NAF, and there's a little piece of how Australia, or Down Under, were part of the World Denizens. So there you go, tying into our name. Also, the NAF also interested in running these majors, as I said, and there are 5 of them around the globe, and there are a few, I think, that have reached the same level of extra ranking. And that includes Euro Bowl, which is all the European team tournaments getting together. And I think the UKTC, or UK Teams Championship, I think might have a similar level of coach ranking exchange there. Other things the NAF do is they obviously give advice on how to run your league. They provide tools to help run leagues. So there's actually like a league tracking system that you can tap into and utilise. And basically they're there just to support Blood Bowl, and they have done so from the very early days. As I mentioned, it was Jervis Johnson's idea for the NAF. So any kind of idea that Games Workshop and the NAF are at odds or should be opposed to each other is absolute nonsense. So I just want to put that one to bed. In fact, I know that the very first lot of NAF dice, which were Blood Bowl block dice were cast by Games Workshop and donated to the NAF. Now, think about that for a moment. Games Workshop donated product for free to fans of their game. That doesn't sound like Games Workshop of today to you, does it?
No, it's not going with the current trend if you're reading any sort of social media. But yeah, that's an interesting thing that not a lot of people would know, that the Games Workshop were behind the NAF. These are not two separate organisations, although technically they are two different organisations. But Games Workshop's behind it, or was originally. And I don't see any reason why they would be against the NAF now. Certainly the NAF has helped Blood Bowl continue, so why wouldn't Games Workshop be behind them? And
we'll actually hear a little bit more about that from Mr. Nate Beam a little later. But the other thing I want you to know is if you have any of the sets of the old block dice that the NAF produced, every single one of those NAF block dice were produced by Games Workshop at their own dice foundry. So those dice were produced by Games Workshop for the NAF. Now, if they weren't supportive of each other, that would have never happened. So that puts that rumour well and truly to bed. Now, the other big event that the NAF help facilitate is once every 4 years, there is a World Cup. Now, I don't want to use all of our ammunition in one go, and I do want to save some of it for another episode. I want to chat a little bit about the World Cup, perhaps in greater detail in another podcast. But it is once every 4 years, Blood Bowl enthusiasts from all around the globe get together and play Blood Bowl. The very first one of those World Cups, which was envisaged back in 2001 by Jervis, actually ended up happening in 2007, the very first one, and it was held at Games Workshop headquarters. Again, a sign of support by Games Workshop for the NAF. It was such a big event that the number of people who turned up for it couldn't even fit in the venue, and they actually had to hire a pub 200 metres down the road to fit the overflow. Since then, numbers have been exponential. The last World Cup in Alicante in Spain had over 2,200 coaches at it and blew the records away for the largest number of people coming together to play a miniature tabletop game of any type.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to mention. That Dan mentioned last episode, how do you introduce someone to Blood Bowl? And you say, do you know Warhammer? Not even Warhammer or 40k have tournaments of that size, so Blood Bowl's doing something well.
Absolutely. Adepticon, generally speaking, is the biggest 40k event on the planet. The biggest I've seen was that they had 500 or 600 players at a time. So with over 2,000 players, it's massive.
Yeah, so I guess I want to just dispel any kind of ideas about what the NAF don't do for a moment. One of the things that a lot of coaches get confused about is who makes rules changes for Blood Bowl. Let me put that to bed. It is not the NAF. The NAF do not make rules changes, nor do they somehow try and force rule changes out of Games Workshop by lobbying or petitioning. They do, however, provide statistics and data on what the rules are actually doing. And so there is a feedback loop, but it's much more organic, perhaps, than some kind of formal lobby.
Yeah, and we've only got to look at the latest FAQ. And one of the notes before we got the actual FAQ document was we've been looking at how well Underworld Denizens have been going, and we've made this change because of it. And the only way they can look at that is through the data supplied by the NAF. So these two companies are still working together.
Yes, even if it's as two separate entities now, and I think that's pretty clear now and evident that they aren't intrinsically linked anymore. They are still working in harmony, and I'm delighted. I think it's a really good match. I think it provides just enough separation that the NAF can give advice to say, look, we don't think you should use this particular rule in a tournament rule set, and I think that's fair game if it's going to actually hinder somebody's experience of a particular event. And I think the NAF have by and large done an absolutely excellent job of staying out of trying to arbitrate rules and actually just making sure everybody has a fantastic time. And the growth of Blood Bowl is partly due to what the NAF have done over the years. And I just want to pause for a moment to say thank you to everybody involved in the NAF over all the years. It's been running for over 20 years now. And if you have a look at the back end of the NAF website in the members section, you'll probably see that the NAF is quite old because it looks like it was written quite some time ago. But the NAF is still doing a fantastic job today, and I'm really delighted by the work that they've done. But I wanted to come back to our listeners now, and I might start with Dan here. I wanted to ask you, why should you be a member of the NAF? If you've maybe come to a Blood Bowl tournament or you're thinking about going to a Blood Bowl tournament, why would it be an advantage to sign up as a Blood Bowl coach? Why would you want to do that?
Well, this is a question that I struggled with myself originally was, do I need to be a NAF member? Why would I want to be a NAF member? And the first tournament in 11s that I played with you at the Great Barrier Biff 2 years ago, I wasn't a member of the NAF at the time. Looking back on it now, I kind of wish that I had been, even though I didn't do the best at that tournament as I might have if I played the same team again today. Purely for stat tracking, for my own personal gratification. So what people can do is they can keep track of their stats for their particular teams, see if they're doing better with one team than another, see what their ratings look like as they play against better and better players and they get more experience. I'm doing the Millsy now, I'm doing the arms.
We've had a discussion in our long road trip down here, a 7-hour road trip, about how raw we were in our first episode. Hopefully we've come a long way since then. It was only a couple of weeks ago we started, but hopefully all of those arms are going, and hopefully Dan's back to ready to continue his sentence.
Rightio. So yeah, there it is again. We can edit that later.
I think gifts are one of the things that people get driven to is collecting what the NAF produce each year, and the NAF want to give back to Blood Bowl and to kind of encourage annual subscription. You don't have to be a member to the NAF every year. You can sign up once and never again. That's absolutely fine. It allows every single game that you play a Blood Bowl at a tournament that's NAF approved to count from then on. There is no compulsion to sign up every year. But if you do sign up every year, you get access to the member section of the NAF and you get this gift, which, as I mentioned, was originally 3 sets of block dice. But Games Workshop decided that this was a really, really good idea to do for themselves, and so they took that back off the NAF, and as of Blood Bowl 2016, you could purchase block dice for your own unique team, and as you know, there's now lots of block dice for each individual team for both 2016 and now 2020, and a lot of the teams have had multiple releases of dice, once for 2016 and once for 2020 Blood Bowl. So now the NAF do 2d6 and a token that is useful for Blood Bowl in some capacity. And the 2024 NAF gift is light or lime green dice, and the token is a prone and stunned token that you can use for, particularly if you've got a large model, that if you have to lay it down on the pitch, it can be substituted for this token to indicate that the miniature is either stunned or prone until they stand up again, so that prone player isn't taking up 4 squares on the pitch.
Which helps for people that have really big models, like my trolls that are super fat and hang over the squares. It also helps protect your model so you're not chipping or accidentally damaging your paint, maybe breaking an arm off the model if it falls over at an awkward angle, and just makes it easy to see everyone on the table. Yeah,
so the NAF, we just want to really encourage you to consider it. You don't have to. Here in Australia, we actually really quite want to make Blood Bowl as accessible as possible, and if you don't want to be a member of the NAF, you don't have to be. And actually, we were delighted that the NAF have actually made a decision fairly recently that any games that are against a non-NAF coach at a Blood Bowl tournament will still count and track. And we'll touch on that in our interview briefly. But I just wanted to really highlight the work that the NAF do to support Blood Bowl tournaments. We are really thankful at Down Under World Denizens that the NAF exists and support our Blood Bowl tournaments, and we'd particularly just like to say thank you to our local NAF representative, Mr. James Russell Wills, aka Rabid, who we're so thankful for. We're going to get him on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. He has sent us a few messages after listening to our first podcast. He's been impressed. Rabid is a wealth of knowledge. He's known throughout Australia, if you're in the tournament circles, He's been to multiple World Cups and so on. I believe he was also vice president of the NAF. So he knows his stuff. So when he said, "Look, I'm more than keen to jump on and let you interview me," it's like we just went, "Hooray! Yeah, we've made it." So looking forward to that. That'll be a few episodes time, but yeah, it's I don't know.
Well, Millsy, that's actually a perfect segue for us to launch straight into our very first interview. This is not with James. This is actually with ex-NAF president and one of the longest standing members of the NAF, Mr. Nate Beam. Let's cross to him now.
Welcome to our Down Under World Denizens' first ever guest commentator. This is Nate Beam, none other than the man who features on the Bribe the Ref NAF token, if you have one of those orangey tokens. And also, he has served on the NAF committee for a very long time, Mr. Nate Beam.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Millsy, kick us off. Let's ask Nate some questions.
Well, I'd like to start with some rapid fire questions. So don't take any time to think, just launch them out there. First one, how and when did you first get into Blood Bowl?
When I was about 12 years old, I was helping. We had a comic convention locally, and there was a game shop that would come exhibit, and they would hire kids to help them load the truck afterwards. And the proprietor of that shop introduced me to Space Hulk in 1989, and I got my father interested, and we went to the shop a week later, and I bought Blood Bowl then, and got a couple free packs of first edition players, and I was off. I didn't actually play a proper game until the third edition came out, but me and my friends made up our own rules for all the second edition boards and models.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds like we got into the game
team?
at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I started playing just as third edition dropped, so sounds like we got in about the same time. Off you go, Millsy.
Okay, what's your favourite team?
Well, traditionally I played Dark Elves the most, but I tend to try to handicap myself more these days. So I would say Renegades are my favorite team thematically, probably.
Nice. What do you prefer, league or tournament?
I think that answer has changed for me. I think at one time I preferred tournaments. I like getting out, and I feel like we had a really strong tournament scene here. But with the new additions and everything, I think I like a little bit more control over my experience, and a league that I run gives me that opportunity to be have things as I like them.
Too easy.
Awesome.
Babs, got any questions for Nate?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. Okay, here's a contentious one. All right, you've obviously got your head around the 2020 rules, having served during its release, and that's one of the things that both Millsy and I want to go on the record of saying thank you for, is navigating that fairly turbulent time, really. I just wanted to say thank you personally for your steady hand on the tiller of the NAF presidency during that season. But if you could change one thing for Blood Bowl, what is the one thing that you would change?
Oh, I might bring Piling On back. I really miss Piling On. Right.
The pile driver just does not do it for you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's true. And I like the old Underworld roster. I think I'd like the living rulebook Underworld roster back.
Amen, Nate. Mate, we're getting along like a house on fire. Okay, I'm going to ask another question. Out of all the star players, including ones that may not have made their transition through to 2020 edition, who's your favourite? Who's your favourite star player?
Oh, I'm not a big fan of stars. I like the model for Twain Red Venom from second edition. I have trying to corner the market on those. I have 13 or 14 copies of that model. But for modern days, I like the fat Glart pretty well, the new Glart. I think model wise, but I'm kind of a narcissist, so I'm not a big star player guy. I always wanted to be my own players doing most of the work.
Oh, I don't think you're alone. I think there's quite a lot of players that think stars make the teams a little bit too generic in terms of they can play for such a wide range of teams now that it's like, oh yay, another Griff with who are they? Who's Griff playing with this time? Is it halflings? Is it dwarves? Is it humans? They're all kind of a bit the same. So I take your point. You definitely haven't cornered the market on 2-earn Red Venom. I have 2 of them. One sitting for my Chaos Renegade team. So there you go. He'll be my Dark Elf in my Chaos Renegade team.
Well, definitely give a spare if you want to sell it to me. I'm always open to acquiring new copies.
Fantastic. Alrighty. Something non-Blood Bowl related. If you were an Aussie, if you're an Australian, I'd be asking you what your favourite flavour of Shapes is. Shapes are a brand of biscuits down here in Australia, but since you're not an Aussie, what is your favourite biscuit?
Oh man, I'm not much of a sweet guy. That's a
Shapes are actually savoury cookies. They're kind of like, I don't know, do you call them crisps? Yeah, kind of, but they're in a packet like that, but they're baked wheat goods.
Yeah. We have. I don't know if you have wafer cookies down there, but I kind of like those because they're plain. As I say, I'm not a real sweets guy. I'm like Ned Flanders. Just give me the plain flavor.
Okay. All right. All right. We got that. There are our quick fire questions that we want to ask our feature guest commentator on our podcast on a regular basis. And just to our listeners, if you want us to tighten up those regular 6 questions, shoot us an email at downunderworlddenizens@gmail.com or post on our Facebook page, which is just search for Down Under World Denizens on Facebook. You'll find the group. There are some questions you have to answer to be a member of that group, but we'd love to have you along for the ride on this podcast journey. So Nate, some specific questions for you. Obviously, I've already mentioned I'm extremely grateful for your work with the NAF. And you did just mention to us earlier that you weren't just the president, you actually served for a period of time on the NAF executive committee before serving as president. But so tell me, why did you put your hand up to be involved in the NAF or run for NAF president in the first place?
Well, I ran for tournament director originally, not really knowing what it entailed, to be honest with you. I was just really into Blood Bowl. I wanted to do the most I could, and that seemed like a big job that became available. The reason for running for president is a little bit negative, honestly. Every time an election cycle comes around, we start hearing sort of dark rumors about who intends to run. And it's sometimes there's people that we know or that we believe, I'm still saying we, but that we think might not be suited for the role or might not have the time to do it. And sometimes there's people that we don't have a lot of faith in from an ethical perspective because of the way they behaved as an organizer or what have you. So when I was tournament director, I had a year left of my term, and we started hearing some names we didn't like when it came to president, and no one else seemed primed to run. We couldn't find a candidate, so I was kind of the last man standing, I guess. And it was an advantageous thing because I had defeated Purple Goo for tournament director, and me becoming president meant that he would become tournament director, and I think he was one of the best we've ever had. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think he only just stepped. Is he still running, or is he just stepped down? I think he's just stepped down, hasn't he?
Yeah, he stepped down.
Yep. I would concur that he did a great job. All right. So, and you served for 4 years as NAF president. Is that correct?
I was tournament director for 4 years and then president for 6.
6. Okay. So 10 years in total. Wow, that's a big commitment. What was the hardest part of being NAF president?
I think I was surprised that when I went from tournament director to president, that I started receiving a lot more negativity, I guess. I think it's also that we started engaging on social media a lot more than we once did. I mean, you never saw Lycos posting on Facebook or whatever, but we tried to become more engaged and more active there, and I think it left us open to receiving more firsthand criticism than we were used to, and I in particular. And it was, it wasn't the most pleasant experience. I think that we know how people are. I don't know how to explain how the internet works, but it's much easier to talk trash to people when you're not having to actually interact with them personally.
Yeah, right. Keyboard warriors.
Right.
Yeah, those anonymous ones, yeah. So what would you say is your crowning achievement in your opinion as NAF president?
Well, as mentioned earlier, that obviously Games Workshop re-entering the game was something of a it's a big opportunity, but it's something of a treacherous time too, because the veterans got very nervous, to include me. So I'm proud of the way that we managed to keep it together and we kind of bridged that. I really like the era in which we had Living Rulebook and Blood Bowl 2016 stars, if you remember that one, where you could have both arts and 4 chainsaws and stuff like that.
Yeah, bring back more chainsaw players. I'm all for that.
Right, but I liked that we were seeing combinations that weren't intended by either set of designers. I kind of liked how unwieldy it was. I may be alone in that, but I enjoyed that era, and I think it was a nice sort of bridge for veterans where they still got to play their style of Blood Bowl for a while as it was going.
I was one of those for a while there. Are there any differences in tournaments between countries and regions, or are they all a tournament's a tournament?
Oh, yeah. I would say in the United States and England, we see much zanier tournaments. We see tournaments with really crazy custom stars and custom tables and ghosts on the pitch. There are, I think, at least 4 North American tournaments in which there's a chicken or turkey roaming the pitch, making trouble. So I don't think you see those so much in Germany or wherever.
No. They've just been upgraded. They're foxes now.
Right, that's right. But you also don't see variants. I know Australia sees them, and the States like variants a lot. I think England does too. But in continental Europe, you don't see 7s, much less the more obscure variants. So yeah, I think there's some variation.
Yeah. I was going to say, just coming back to your crowning achievement there about navigating between, what the NAF was wanting to see and what GW were doing. Did you interact much with kind of the rules team or the specialist games team at GW, or how did that work?
Yeah, I would email with Andy Hoare occasionally, who was in charge at the time, and the lead designer, Jonathan Taylor York, would speak to me a lot. I don't know how much came out of that, really, but it was, yeah, we would communicate with him. It wasn't incredibly fruitful, but it wasn't contentious either. It, was a nice thing for a while to chat once in a while about what we were doing. JTY actually asked me for advice on naming what would eventually be the Spike Journal. They were looking for a sportsy name for it. And my idea were like the annual or the yearbook, and they didn't like that. So, I mean, for obvious reasons, because it turned out not to be annual. But that was a fun thing to be involved with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the almanac, right, which is the collection of the spikes, and that's a pretty sportsy kind of name.
Sure.
Okay. What do you think, in your opinion, is the most important role the NAF has?
Well, the main goal is to keep tournaments relatively standardized. So if you come from America to Australia, you don't roll up to a tournament and find out you can only use 3 sources in your Lizard Man team, for instance. That's kind of the thing we want, is for people to feel secure about the experience they're going to get whenever they show up to a NAF tournament, and also be sure that they'll be allowed to play. People aren't allowed to run private tournaments or not let people in because they don't like them. So I think that's the main thing the NAF is for. Just make sure that things are accessible to everyone.
Okay. So if our listeners aren't completely familiar with the NAF, Nate has stepped down as NAF president. He's not NAF president anymore, and we have a new NAF president who ran on a platform that was contentious. We're not going to go into the nitty-gritties of what that stands for or not, but I'm interested to hear from your perspective, Nate. What do you think is the biggest challenge that the NAF has to deal with moving forward?
Well, they've always been in growth mode because we were supposedly a fringe game or a dead game. we're all trying to find people and make people aware of the game. I don't think that's a problem anymore. It's more of a problem now that we're seeing more calendar conflicts and more disciplinary problems as our audience grows and our membership grows, and we're getting different kinds of people, and there's a little bit of culture shock. So I think now the big issue is segueing from growth to regulation, I would say, where we have to figure out a way to, keep people getting along like we did when we were a smaller concern.
Yeah, and certainly in Queensland here, we've had to deal with a couple of issues, haven't we, Mildy?
We've had a couple over the last year or so, all dealt with rather well at the moment, I think. But the bigger the community, the more chance there are for people with different opinions on how they should be taken or how they should be reacting. So, yeah. So Nate, I know with the new NAF president coming in, there's been a lot of talk about allowing or just having NAF tournament only, or where non-NAF members can't attend and so on. What's your opinion on that?
I think that for most tournaments, I would, if not making NAF membership mandatory, I would at least lean on people pretty hard. I don't think we've had a tournament locally that wasn't 100% NAF for a long time. And there are exceptions. Like if there's a convention tournament where you're going to be seeing a lot of new people or something like that, I understand. You want to let everybody play and let them get exposed, but it's so inexpensive now that it's hard to think of many arguments why people shouldn't sign up. And
yeah, we've had discussion about this ourselves as why wouldn't you join the NAF? We get free swag, we get to keep these details. But there just seems to be some sort of reluctance on some people's behalf to join up.
Yeah, it is an odd one. I mean, here in Queensland, we've been looked after very well by James Russell Wills, aka Rabbit, and we've got a lot of the older sets of NAF renewal dice, and if you signed up for the NAF, you can literally grab a set of NAF dice that you could automatically eBay and get 3 times your money back. But yet some people still don't want to be absolutely. NAF members.
Right. I guess it's just some sort of, obviously some people just have that reaction to anything, any form of authority they are put off by. I mean, I guess that's understandable in some context. But in this one, it's just other people that like Blood Bowl. I don't think there's any sort of sinister goings on. I can't even imagine what the NAF would be doing that people would truly object to. I think sometimes they're just knee-jerk anti everything.
Yeah, although that said, in Australia, we probably have one of the highest rates of non-NAF members at tournaments. I don't know whether that's true, but certainly it's fairly normal for there to be a percentage of non-NAF members at tournaments because we don't make it included in part of the entry costs. And I don't know whether that's just something that's been traditional or whether that's something that has been an intentional decision along the way somewhere. But I really like the decision the NAF has just made, where now if you're playing a non-NAF member, at least the game is still recorded. It doesn't result in any coach rankings changing, but at least the game is still recorded in the database. I think that's a good compromise. I'm happy with that decision. I think that's put a lot of people at ease, and certainly the talk locally, at least in Australia, has been very positive about that decision.
Oh, absolutely. I think the first 2 tournaments I went to, I only had 2 games that counted, and they were both losses. And I once drove 9 hours to a tournament, and none of my games counted. So it is a kind of an unpleasant thing where it's not even rankings. It's just that you want to be able to look back on it, remember where you've been, or to disappear into the ether that way.
Yeah,
it's disappointing.
Yeah, and I think some of the confusion may be because, as we alluded to earlier, in some regions of the world, it's very unusual to come to a tournament where there are non-NAF members. Certainly that seems to be what happens in the UK, and maybe more widely afield than that, I'm not sure. But and so I think there is a little bit of a difference in the way the NAF is viewed and what its role, at least perception is of what its role is.
Sure.
So Nate, for our listeners, many of the people listening to this podcast are in Australia. Getting to an international tournament is a big ask because we're down isolated in the land of Oz. What would your advice be? We're reaching this new era where for the first time ever, we're sending a team of 9 coaches over for Euro Bowl. We've never managed to get a team of 9 willing to travel, but there is one going. What would be your advice to somebody listening to the podcast about why do it? Why would you spend thousands of dollars to get to a tournament in another country?
Well, I think once you get there, it's a very revitalizing thing to find out that there are people sharing your interests so far away. I played in Spain in 2015 was my first international tournament, and it's a great thing to travel that far and find that people are doing exactly the same things that you do at home. It's it's one of those things that shows you people aren't that different, what have you.
Yeah.
Cool. What's the language barrier like going to an international tournament?
It varies. The language standards are different in different countries, but generally you don't need that many words to play Blood Bowl. I know they put out a glossary for each World Cup, and it's maybe 24 terms. So if you can get those down, it's not too bad. Once you know block and dodge and frenzy in the other language, that's all you need to know, really. Not much beyond that.
Foul. You forgot foul. Don't worry about pass. You don't need that in 2020 rules.
Absolutely. And they do a lot of fouling, I find. That's you get to Spain, every team you play fouls you just about every turn.
Yeah.
One of those teams.
So, Nate, any other advice you'd like to give to Australian Blood Bowl coaches? Any final words that you'd like to encourage the Aussie Blood Bowl scene with?
No, I just think you should keep doing what you're doing. I think you have a great scene down there. I've been lucky enough to befriend a number of your members, and my vice president during my last 2 terms was Rapid. I think you've got your own scene. I think it's unique. I don't think you should try to emulate anyone else. Just keep things going as you are.
Fantastic. All right. Well, look, Nate, I would just like to really extend a very warm Aussie welcome to you. If you ever make it to Oz, I personally would say if you came to one of our tournaments, we'd probably swing you free entry. We'd be absolutely delighted to have you along. We'd be absolutely delighted. We consider you an honorary Aussie. Is that okay, Millsy? Can we do that?
We can confer that title.
Fantastic.
What an honor.
So,
that's the only reason I came on. I was hoping for that.
Yeah, that's it. We gotta make sure that you stick another shrimp on the barbie. Although what's lovely about that is we don't call them shrimp. We call them prawns here in Australia. Right. All right, Nate. Look, we want to once again just say thank you so much for all you've done for Blood Bowl. I do genuinely mean that we think Blood Bowl is in a much better place as a result of your presidency. I think you can't really understate the work that you've done to keep the ship on a steady pace and even keel. And I do agree with you that the Blood Bowl is now in an unprecedented season where even Games Workshop themselves here in Australia are considering it a core game. That's actually their words, not mine. The number of people playing Blood Bowl seems to be higher than ever before. So, just want to say thank you so much. We're very grateful for the work you've done, and hopefully you will still be around Blood Bowl in some kind of slightly more leisurely fashion.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the sentiment. Thanks for having me on. It's been a fun time.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Thanks very much. Okay, out from us.
And thanks, Nate. That was fantastic to hear from a past president of the NAF. Now let's look at the other side of Blood Bowl. So we've talked about tournaments and the NAF. Now let's look at leagues, which is probably how most of you first started in here. And here on Down Under World Denizens, we want to acknowledge and talk about all of the leagues we have in our state here in Australia, and there's quite a few to go through. And in no particular order, we start off with there's Vault games held in Brisbane City itself. The Sunshine Close Blood Bowl League, they're out of Nambour, Heretics Haven. If you ever want to go to a store, Heretics Haven is amazing for all the stuff they've got up there. We have the Ipswich Blood Bowl League, which is currently at, I believe, 40 registered coaches for this season, which is a massive league here in Queensland. It might, your mileage may vary in other parts of the world, but 40 in a league is huge for us here in Australia. There's another league running out of Comics Plus in Annalee, which is also in Brisbane. We have leagues in Mackay. Townsville has recently started a league up there, the Townsville Area Blood Bowl League. Shout out to those guys. I know they'll be listening. Cairns, that's the Cairns Blood Bowl League, or CBBL. They'll be hosting the Fumble in the Jungle.
We'll be seeing them in 2 weeks' time.
We'll be seeing them in 2 weeks' time, yeah. And we have our very own leagues. As mentioned last episode, is the Gerbil and the Gobble. So there's lots going on league-wise around Queensland. I'm not sure if there's anything you boys need to add to that, or any other info that we'd like to
Yeah, look, if you're interested in joining in a group of like-minded blood bowlers and you want to join a league somewhere, look, I'd really encourage you to maybe even jump on our Facebook page if you haven't already jumped on that group. Don't forget to vote for whose Hoshikomi is best from episode 1. I think
it is currently Millsy's.
Yes, it is, with all of about 10 votes. But still, just jump on there, have a look.
It's mine, Bad. Only mine.
Every vote counts.
Yeah, that's right. And counts for what? I'm not quite sure. I don't think we would do competition. But the point is that Mills is in the lead with his Hoshikomi. There's a bunch of discussion that goes on in that Facebook group. Jump in if you haven't already. And if you want to join one of these leagues, just put a post up there. Let us know that you're looking to join a league. We'll put you in contact with one of the fantastic organisers of these leagues. And this is just the ones we're aware of in Queensland. I'm sure there are some other little leagues hidden away. I'm aware of a couple in Brisbane that we haven't listed. They're pretty quiet. They're held in someone's house or something like that. But if you want to connect with one of these larger leagues that we're aware of, that's a great idea. You may need to wait for their next season. I know that Vault Games, for example, their new season kicks off in August. I know that the Sunny Coast League, their season 6 has only just kicked off, so you've missed that. And you'd probably need to wait for the next season unless there's a dropout part way through.
Oh, and there's another one I've missed, is the North Brisbane Blood Bowl League. I believe they're about to start their next season. They've just finished up as well, so there's another one once again here in Brisbane. But if you're not from Australia or not from there, or if you've got an interesting story, how I explained how our Gobble League used a tournament set up for their initial league. If you've got an interesting story about your league from wherever it may be in the world, we'd like to hear about it.
Yeah.
Or just any interesting stories that are Blood Bowl or sports ball related of some kind.
Fantastic. Hey, Millsy, I hear something about you might be running a little tournament coming up.
I am. I'm putting my hand in the TO ring. And like I said, I'm the variant king. It's not going to be normal. And I've always liked to downsize everything I do, and smaller pitches, smaller teams, and so on. So I've gone for a sevens variant, but I'm going for beach bowl. So one of the reasons I wanted to have a beach bowl tournament as my first is I looked on the NAF and wanted to know who was the number 1 ranked beach bowl player in Australia, and realised there has never been a beach bowl NAF tournament held in Australia. So what better way to have the inaugural beach bowl tournament hosted on the NAF site. And looking across the table from me here, I've got Mr. Babbage has actually designed and produced a unique beach bowl pitch for me. Mr. Babbage, you want to talk to me about how you went about doing all of that?
Yeah, look, I actually have been in contact with a few people trying to source a decent beach bowl pitch, because Millsy's tournament is running the Friday before my own tournament for 2024.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention there's a secondary tournament after mine.
Yeah. There's this little thing that happens afterwards. We're running our Great Barrier Biff 2. You heard Dan or Wilts talk briefly about the original Great Barrier Biff, which he attended. Great Barrier Biff is, as alluded to, it's held on the Great Barrier Reef, and we actually catch a boat, a ferry, out to a tropical island or near tropical island, and we actually play Blood Bowl on the tropical island in the middle of the Great Barrier Reef. So it's a bit of a theme tournament, a bit of a piratical theme. We've got 5 games of Blood Bowl held at Great Keppel Island this time around. The previous one was held on Curtis Island. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to produce these pitches for part of what you get when you sign up to the tournament. You get a bunch of free pieces of Blood Bowl paraphernalia as part of your membership or part of your registration to the tournament. And so Millsy decided he wanted to give everybody a pitch, a beach bowl pitch. And so I hit Photoshop. I managed to piece this together mostly from bits and pieces around the traps using various elements from other places. But I did want to mention that there is a couple of little elements that I managed to use with permission from Dave Grapham Models. So he has given me permission to do that. So really wanted to make sure that you're aware that there is kind of some intellectual property involved in that. He's given us permission to produce those pictures. And if you want to have one of these pictures in your hot little hands, but can't make Great Keppel Island, which obviously is the first preferred way to do so, if you can make it up to the Beach Party Rumble and Great Barrier Biff 2 in August, then the 23rd and 24th and 25th. So 23rd is the Beach Party Rumble, 24th and 25th is the Saturday and Sunday, which is the Great Barrier Biff 2. Then you can obviously get that swag and more. The Great Barrier Biff has its own set of swag, including a miniature travel case, and I believe it's one of the first Blood Bowl tournaments ever to give out a miniature storage case and travel case as part of your registration. But this pitch, I'm offering to listeners, if you want one of these pitches, you can jump in and pay a small sum of money. What are we saying, Millsy? Is it a $10 dues?
$10 dues? No. Originally, when we designed this pitch, we looked at a local company here, Officeworks, which is a stationery suppliers, to create these pitches, and we were going to do it on a substance called Tyvek, which would have cost us $10 or close to the $10, and we used some of the extra profits to fund the rest of the tournament. But since then, we've found a new supplier which actually does this on vinyl, and I put a post out earlier on there as soon as we found out about this, and said to the people already coming, are you happy to pay an extra $5 to get a more durable vinyl version? And it was 100% unanimous. So if you're after one of these Blood Bowl pitches, these Beach Bowl pitches, they'll be $15, and we'll get details of how you can send money to us.
Yeah, although if you're the one listener in Brussels who's listening to us, obviously shipping is not included.
No, shipping is not. So if you're an overseas listener, maybe we'll see you at the Fumble in the Jungle in Cairns. We did talk about that. If you're coming down to it, I'll definitely bring one up for you.
However, if you did want one shipped somewhere else in the world, obviously we will ship it to you at cost, but we'll need to find out what that shipping cost may be, but we'd make sure it gets to you safely and soundly. I have recently been shipping a bunch of my photoshopped pictures that I've made through the eras over to Thrud Bowl, and there's my little shout out for an international tournament. I believe they're well and truly sold out, held in Swindon in the UK. They run an auction there of a bunch of Blood Bowl paraphernalia, and so yes, the 3 Blood Bowl pitches that I've designed over the years from 2017 to now will be available for auction at Thrud Bowl 2024.
I've seen also that the Thrud Bowl charity auction has a very special piece this year. Last year for Thrud Bowl, they had a collection of every NAF block dice series is one single collection available on offer. This year, they've gone to the next generation. There's a collection of every single NAF D6 and all of the tokens, and they've arranged it in a very nice glass-cased frame to present it nicely on your wall.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And of course, Threadball, we're very passionate for, because it is an auction raising money for charity. And there are two charities that Threadball raises funds for. The Roy Castle Lung Foundation is one of those, which is obviously raising funds for research into cancer and lung cancer specifically. And the other charity organisation that they raise funds for is a Mind, which is a mental health organisation and raising funds for men's mental health, which we're very passionate about here, and we might talk about Blood Bowl and mental health in a future Down Under World Denizens podcast coming up.
Yeah, and just going back to our beach bowl pitch here, it's one of the fairly unique things here in Queensland that majority of the tournaments we attend, we don't take our own pitches. I know previous to the tournaments in the last couple of years, it had been quite a while here in Queensland since we had our last tournament, and certainly the interstate tournaments that we go to, one of the things you do is you take your team, you take your dice, and you take a pitch. But for some reason, the tournaments up here of late have been providing pitches for you. So if you're going to a tournament and it's your first ever tournament, it might be an appropriate time to give a bit of a shout out and ask whether your tournament has a pitch available or whether you need to bring your own. But yeah, I thought it was a rather unique aspect, and I'm not sure why it has come up, but yeah, here in Queensland they tend to supply pitches for us.
And not just any pitches, absolutely lovely custom pitches. I have to say, I've been absolutely stunned. I'm really looking forward to playing on the Cane Toad Cup pitches tomorrow.
Oh, and we can play on it tomorrow night. I have pre-ordered one. I'll be picking one up. So after Cane Toad Cup Day 1, we'll be coming back here to our lovely abode and probably playing on another game on the same pitch.
And also just a big shout out to the Sunny Coast boys for Sunny Coast Slam. They organised a group purchase of the PMTT pitches, and I also think they're lovely to play on. The neoprene surface of those pitches is just delightful. The beach ball pitch, as mentioned, is vinyl. It's not on neoprene. I think it's a really hardy, sturdy pitch. Rolls up very nicely, easily transportable. So just want to commend that to you. If you want to get one of those pitches for $15 dues, make sure you let us know at downunderworlddenizens@gmail.com or on our Facebook group. Make sure you put your order in and pay before the end of the financial year, because that'll give us time to put that order in and get one produced especially for you. And speaking of tournaments, what we are going to do now is cross live to Cane Toad Cup, and we are going to be interviewing first up the organiser himself, tournament organiser Chris Stratford.
Okay, we're here live, day 2 of Cane Toad Cup. This episode we've been talking about tournaments, so we have here with us the tournament organiser, which Chris Stratford, or Devil's Reject on the NAF. So we're going to just hear a few words from Chris, and my first question is, what goes into creating such an awesome event as the one you've made?
Hey guys, well, pretty much just lots and lots of organising, I think, and I try and make stuff for people who like to use things, like in their games. That's my main kind of theme, is to get stuff out there that everyone likes to use, so like dice and tokens and stuff like that. Anything you use in a game that's useful, I reckon I want to make, so, and make it look cool.
Yeah, I must admit, we've talked about this already. Not just the amount of swag that you've given us, but the quality of it as well. So you've obviously sourced out some really good suppliers. Yeah,
it took me a few months to kind of get it all sorted, but I think it's all worth it in the end. And like I was saying previously, we were talking, and it's all kind of set up for next year now. So now it should be easier, and we should get some more cool stuff, because I've got more time to make more cool stuff.
Fantastic. And just if there's tournament organisers or budding tournament organisers on the podcast, what advice would you give them in terms of promoting your event?
What I did differently probably this time than I have for other events, I've done other ones for AOS and stuff like that, Age Sigmar. I did a lot more social media kind of reels and videos and just getting ready. And if you're preparing early, you can get lots of little bits and pieces out to people, and it gets people excited. They see what's coming up, or little teasers and stuff like that. So little pictures of stuff in progress, all that kind of stuff. New artwork you're getting done, anything like that is, I think gets people excited and gets people talking, and the more interaction you have on social media, the better, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, I must admit the hype for it has been amazing. Like every couple of weeks there'll be a video showing, this new piece of swag or this, and it's just kept that ongoing and ongoing. So it's kept that hype level to a pretty high level. Yeah. Yeah,
that was the plan. I was purposely waiting for a couple of days after each thing to kind of put something else out, because I didn't want to just get everything out in one go and then not have anything. So I wanted to kind of leak it gradually as it comes close to the event, get more and more stuff kind of coming out. So yeah, bit of a plan.
Chris, is there anything that you'd do differently next time, or something you'd want to do as a point of difference to put a highlight on?
I think probably releasing ticket sales earlier. That was kind of the thing I think I waited too long for, but I kind of had to wait for a few things to kind of get in line before I could do it properly, because I didn't want to have ticket sales go up and have nothing to show yet, and I was waiting for that. And then so I was only a month, I think I had ahead, a month and a half I think was ticket sales, and that's pretty close. Next time it'll be probably 3 months out or something, not too far, but not far enough out that people can't plan flights and stuff like that for international travellers. Well, not international, interstate at least. International for, go for it.
That's one of the things we've talked about. You're a rather large name in Australia, and you go to lots of tournaments interstate and so on. So getting those interstate people to come up here to Queensland is fantastic, and I'm presuming that next year there's going to be quite a lot more if we can get that hype train happening further.
Yeah. Well, we had a couple of guys from Melbourne come up, so Jono and Mick came up, so that's really good. And had another couple that were coming, but they had to pull out for other reasons, family reasons and stuff like that, which is fine. But yeah, I reckon it was kind of a sneaky reason I wanted to run the Ausbowl state champs up here, because I knew that I could do it, and also that I could get people up here to show we had a scene. And it was kind of leading into the fact that I know I wanted to run an event later, so I wanted to kind of get everyone kind of up here and have a look. And it's a good way to get 6 guys from each state to come and have a look, and at least then they're usually the best guys around. They're usually the guys who go to the tournaments, and they're usually guys that see everyone, and they'll hopefully spruik the event, or state that at least Queensland we got something up here.
And Down Under World Denizens would just like to say thank you so much for all the work you've done to do that, and we really value it, we really appreciate it. You definitely helped take Blood Bowl in Queensland to the next level of this generation of Blood Bowl tournaments. And my final question is, how important do you think is the rule set of the tournament in determining whether people come or not come?
I think it's probably about, it's not too important, but it's a little bit important. You can't make it crazy one that kind of sections people's favourite team out of it. I think you kind of cater to all the teams as much as you can without making anything too strong. It's kind of I usually kind of go a baseline, what you see standard tournaments around the world kind of go baseline, and then just add a little bit of flavour to it to kind of get your point across, what theme you have, I guess, for the tournament. I was trying to kind of keep our theme from the original Kanto Cup, where we were making stars and stuff like that, but it was a bit hard to run in this kind of rule set without making it go too crazy. And I didn't want to have the thing, more rules you add, the more time it takes to play games, and I wanted to keep a pretty tight schedule and keep the games shorter, and more games, more fun, quicker games.
Yeah, okay, so thanks for that, Chris. I think we might wrap it up there, and you might hear it a little bit later on from some interviews of some players throughout today. And just thanks again, Chris Stratford, for letting us host our podcast live here with you at your tournament.
Thanks for coming, guys.
All right, and we are live here at Cane Toad Cup, although it won't be live by the time you're listening. But we have here first-time tournament attendee Scott. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And tell us, what made you come to Cane Toad Cup?
I really just wanted to get in on the tournament scene. I'd sort of been interested in Blood Bowl for a while, and I just really wanted to sort of see what the whole community was like as a bit of a wider type thing.
Yeah, and here we are, beginning of day 2. How have you found the experience so far?
Oh, it's been fantastic. It really has. Just to see the community actually get out there and support something like this, it's been really quite. It's just been really good. Yeah.
All right, well, tell us a little bit about how you've gone. I did happen to play you game 2.
Yes. So I had a loss at the first one, a draw second, and then I won the third one. So I've sort of had a pretty even sort of experience at the moment. So,
Yeah, one of all. And what team are you playing?
I'm playing the Norse at the moment. Yeah.
And anything you would change as a result of your playing experience from yesterday? If you could do your roster over again, is there anything you'd adjust?
I think I'd probably be a bit more defensive in the way that I do things and sort of set myself up to be probably more players that are in my favour is probably definitely the way I'd go. Yeah, yep.
All right, and then for anybody who's listening to this podcast and has never been to a Blood Bowl tournament, what would you say to somebody in that category?
I definitely encourage you to get along. It's really something sort of, the more people we've got at tournaments, the more support we've got for the actual game and the more we can actually put on things like this. It really just feeds into the lifeblood of the game itself, I think, and really just coming out to these sort of events is really going to be a good thing for the sport and for everyone. So.
All right, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much.
And we have here Mick, aka Hydro Hound, who's come all the way from Melbourne for Cane Toad Cup. Mick, what made you come interstate for a Blood Bowl tournament?
I've gone to a few interstate ones, and they're generally good experiences, especially the 2 days. The guys are lovely. You get to meet new people, and you don't play the same guys you always play.
Yeah, fantastic. And did you come by yourself, or have you come as a little group?
I've come with Jono, Captain Prosecco. He's guy I normally travel with for most interstate ones, and it's been good fun.
All right, and to somebody who doesn't normally come to Blood Bowl tournaments interstate, maybe just 1 or 2 locally, why would you encourage them to come along interstate?
Different scenes, like you get different metas, and once again, most people who play are really nice people. And especially in Queensland, it's been lovely up here. I've had 3 really good games so far, so I'd encourage just a different experience, and you might start coming to more if you go to them.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for your time.
Too easy, thanks mate.
We're back at Cane Toad Cup. We have Peter, aka Jawa Knight, joining us at the table. Jawa, you're a very fun opponent to play against, I can say from personal experience. Do you put a special effort into making your opponent welcome and making sure both players enjoy their game?
Yeah, I do. And firstly, thank you for having me on. It's very exciting. I do. I mean, Blood Bowl's a fun game. Most of the times, and most of the opponents I play against, they're normally dads. Like, this game's been around for a long time, unlike 40K or some of the other games I play where they're early 20s and, they've got too much expendable cash. This game I found, Blood Bowl, is people that have been playing it for a long time or people with busy lives that you can just sit down and you can play for about an hour and a half. So with that in mind, you do want to try and be nice to them. You want to just go, you know what, you're probably a dad, I'm probably a dad, or you've got a long-term commitment partner. Let's just enjoy this game. Having said that, when it comes to a tournament game, I will also be playing as best as I can. So I'll be friendly, but I will not take my foot off the pedal.
Yeah, that led into my next question. How many hopes and dreams have you crushed so far on day one?
Not enough. Generally, it's my own dreams that I break.
One of those dreams, Pete, is definitely to make it onto the Queensland squad for the next Old World Championships.
Yes. Any game I really invest time and energy into, I set the bar high for myself. I want to be the best at what I do. So be it laser tag, paintball. I was doing X-Wing for a while before the game went down. And if there's a top level to go for, I will set that bar for myself personally to aim for. So with the resurgence of Blood Bowl in Queensland and a bit of a taste of the last championship, with you guys now saying, hey, there's a tryout for the team, that gives me drive to achieve something in each year.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Pete, and we look forward to seeing your progress and achievements in the years to come, and we'll see how we go for getting you onto the squad for next Ozbowl.
All right, let's hope all the dogs rolls the sixes, hey?
That's
Take
it,
care,
mate.
guys.
And we're back with Zach Gibbs, aka Anxious Ambition, and we're talking about what was your first Blood Bowl tournament experience?
Well, we'll actually rewind back, I would say, 2 years now to the very first Sunny Coast Slam. Shout out to the boys there. A great bunch of blokes. And I took my partner and I went down. We'd never been in the tournament scene before. We'd only ever played in the locals. And I sort of just threw ourselves into that little room. And we made so many friends straight away through the whole community. You know, I met you, Babs. Unfortunately, I hadn't met you, Dan. I met Millsy there. We had a bit of a yarn, and the experience, just the energy, and just the way in which everybody was so welcoming, happy, and just wanted to enjoy themselves. We've been hooked ever since. Like we travel the tournament circuit. I mean, like we've got such great tournaments like the Great Barrier Biff, which was absolutely fantastic, you know, and essentially ever since then I've been motivated to make as many as I can.
Absolutely. Babs did try to drag me along for the first Sunny Coast Slam, which he ended up winning, but I came along for the second one. We had our first match in the last round, and it was definitely a highlight to end on, mate.
Oh, well, 100%. Every time you and I get on a table, I am at that point where, look, if we're running low on time, they have to take me from that table kicking and screaming. Absolute hilarious fun.
Yeah. Now, one thing, Zach, I've never played to go to tournament yet, and I'm dead set to be on that I haven't done that. I'm threatened to. I'm just driving down to Ipswich one weekend just to play you. But for those people coming to the same tournament as you, are you ever going to let them win best?
Well, see, look, there's so much to say, but along the lines of like, I often get people say, "Oh, look, this is just an act. Do you just sort of like, are you doing it for the reward or something like that?" At the end of the day, if I can't win, at least I can win in my own way. And my way of winning is having the best game I can have every time. And part of that is making sure that the person with me is having as much of a fun as I am. And look, Dan, you and I, like, every time we have in, like, the amount of laughs and stuff we have on the tabletop. At the end of the day, my favourite part of a tournament is on the way home. The stories, you know, like we did this, it was absolutely hilarious, and hey, that's the thing that matters.
Well, that's definitely the attitude we want to foster among the tournament community and among the community in general, because that makes it more welcoming and open, so we can get more people involved and get more people having fun. Thanks very much, Zach, for your time, and
thanks, guys.
Good luck for day 2.
All right, I'd just like to say what is coming up in Down Under World Denizens. We haven't talked about all of our regular segments. We might make sure we make time for some of those next episode, but we do definitely have some exciting things coming up in Down Under World Denizens, future episodes coming soon. In particular, we've already mentioned we have guest speaker Mr. James Russell Wills. He will be on our podcast. His NAF name is Raybid. We'll be really pleased to talk to him about the NAF and travelling further afield to represent your state or island, if you're from New Zealand, in the Australian Ausbowl State Championships. Also wanted to just say, coming up soon in podcast near you, we want to bring some more of our regular featured segments. We want to talk about some of the variants that you can play, sports-themed miniature tabletop board games. And so Millsy has come up with a brilliant idea on how we can talk about one of these variants and showcase it over a variety of our segments.
Yeah, and I'm happy to say I mentioned last podcast about Chris Tattersall from Tats Tabletop in Cairns. He's a 3D printer. He's listened to the first episode, said, thanks for the shout out. And I said, well, if you'd like a bit more, I do have this idea. So basically it's a 6-team, 6-player draft where each of us will come forward with a standard team which consists of 6 positionals and 6 linemen. Basically, we come forward, we put them onto the table, and each coach, through a draft system, gets to take 1 lineman and 1 positional from each team. We do that 6 times. We'll end up with 12 players there, and from there we we go back and we design a roster. We've given some reroll costs and so on, and a TV amount. From there we'll play a 5-game round robin, so everyone will play everyone once on, I believe it's 9 different versions of 7s, and that's something to look forward to in some upcoming episodes. But like I mentioned this to Chris from Tats Tabletop, and he said, mate, I'm on board. What miniatures do you guys need? I'm going to supply them. So big shout out. That'll be our first ever official sponsor. And each coach that's taking one of these drafted teams will be recording our own segments and letting you know why we chose those particular people. Was it because I needed that on my team, or was it because I knew Babs was next picked and needed to take it away from him?
Okay, I can see this coming now.
Well, since I'm in charge of it, I may be number one pick and Babs could be sixth. It could go anywhere from here. But looking forward to that. And that will be an ongoing segment over a few episodes where we talk about what we drafted, what we put into our team, and then how our play experience goes with that. So just a really unique way of getting a team, and then also showcasing the different variants of 7. We've got a standard GW7s. We've got Ozbowl, which uses a 7-style pitch but has a single line of scrimmage. We've also got one version of it, which was the original Oz 7s, which played 7 players on a full-size Blood Bowl pitch. We've got Dungeon Bowl. We've got a couple of games that I've helped design the rules for, which is Arena Bowl. An Arena Bowl takes place on a Blitz Bowl pitch. We also have Bridge Bowl, which you need to wait until this comes out. You will love Bridge Bowl. I certainly do. There's a bridge going down through the middle. There's lava, or there's water, there's ice, and there's pillars to jump to and try and get to the other side. Quite a few different versions of that. And don't worry, we'll have pictures up on our Facebook page so you can see all of these different pitches and what they play like. Beach Bowl will also be one of those as well. So that's what good to look forward to from my side of things. How about you guys?
I can't wait to be a part of it, mate.
And I'm really excited about showcasing the really quality work that comes from Tats Tabletop. I know Chris does a really high quality 3D print, and he is able to print a variety of miniatures suitable for sports themed tabletop board games. And I think in particular this draft leans quite closely to the kind of Dungeon Bowl idea, where you can blend various different teams together to make a team. So I'm really excited about thinking about colour schemes. I might get some listeners' involvement in colour schemes and then painting them up to be a united team, despite the fact they were originally designed to play for completely different teams.
Yeah, I mean, how about we can put a poll up on the Facebook page, and you can tell us what colour we have to paint our teams. I'm not sure.
maybe a colour, so we get some say, or maybe we can choose what shade of that colour. So if they pick green, it could be Nurgle's disgusting putrid green, or it could be light fairy green for the wood elves, or it could be dark seedy chaos green. There's a whole variety of greens. There's a whole spectrum. So yeah, just be a great opportunity to not just showcase the quality of work of Tats Tabletop, show one of these variants off, and in fact, as we said, there's 9 of them that we're going to blend together, and it'll give us a number of podcast episodes where we can talk about these individual games that are a little bit different from the mainstream Blood Bowl, which we spend a lot of our time talking about. All right, I think that might bring us to the close of episode number 2 of Down Under World Denizens. I know it's been a very straight to the point, focused on tournament episode, but I figure that's one way to make sure we keep to time, unlike episode 1. So without further ado, I'd like to say our final sign off. This is Babs saying, roll more pows.
This is Wilt saying, roll more 6s.
And this is Millsy saying, it's win or the casualty bin.
Down Under World Denizens discusses Games Workshop's games and products such as Blood Bowl, Gutter Bowl, Dungeon Bowl, and Crunch. We also discuss other fantasy football board games and concepts from other companies, such as Guild Ball, Grind, Dread Ball, Elf Ball, Myth and Goal, Blitz Bowl, Chaos Ball, Monsters of the Midway, and Feud Ball. We discuss products and services such as miniatures or software made by producers suitable for several of these board games. Games Workshop's terms and conditions in point 2.1 state they grant the user the non-exclusive right to use their authorised intellectual property for broadcasting and other media-related activities such as commentary and opinion pieces, blogs, and other similar informational and descriptive purposes. Down Under World Denizens respects and honours these terms. Out from us.
Brilliant.